Buongiorno, siamo qua per la conferenza stampa di uno dei nostri film in concorso, The Power of the Dog, e vi presento, a partire dalla destra in fondo, i nostri ospiti. Il produttore Roger Frappier, il produttore Iain, la produttrice Tanya Seghatchian, la regista e sceneggiatrice del film Jane Campion, Kirsten Dunst e Benedict Cumberbatch. I'm going to start with a quick question to Jane. Jane, your women have been at the center of your stories, most of your careers. What spoke to you about this book, this story, and these characters to make this shift?
A creative person, I don't really, I don't calculate. So I read this, I don't calculate about gender, it has to be this or that, but I read this book and I just thought, wow, this is an amazing piece of literature. It had a really powerful impact on me because I really believed in the world that Thomas Savage described there. I believed he really lived it. And so that enabled me to kind of really travel deeply into it. And then I just felt the last section of the book was so exciting. And I finished it, and I remember thinking, you know, generally I hardly ever finish novels these days, but this one I was very immersed in. And then I just thought, oh, good book. But over the next few weeks, scenes and themes from the book kept coming back to me, so that I couldn't forget it. And I realized then that this is a really deep piece that works on the psyche, and it's very interesting, very, very different. And slowly I just kept taking steps closer towards finding out who had the rights, which was Roger Frappier, and trying to arrange a meeting with him in Cannes, which we did.
We have a question there.
Good morning, I'm Alessandra Tommasi from Lego, Italy. My question is to Mr. Cumberbatch. I would like to ask you, since Phil seems to be an alpha man, sometimes he's very aggressive and very competitive, I was wondering if you can share with us your opinion about toxic masculinity, and if it's a redeemable quality in him, maybe. And what do you think about the shift of power in the relationship that we see in the movie between women and men? Thank you.
This is for the rest of the press conference, right? I'll write my thesis later. No, I think he does, for me, the toxicity is something that is a product of his nurture, his upbringing, his circumstance. It's nothing that's arrived fully fledged. It comes out of a moment and a moment and a moment and a moment. So I can understand him. I can look into that and appreciate it, not condone it, but understand it. So I don't think it's redeemed by that. It's part of who he is, part of his flaw, part of his personal tragedy. And I think I can understand someone who is defensive, who is anxious about everything they've built being potentially taken away, who is lonely, who is repressed, who is feeling isolated in his circumstance and everything that he's tried to create that is authentic in his life, when there's a center of authenticity that can't fully be revealed. And I think as far as how it speaks to toxic masculinity in the world, if you go towards it trying to understand it and acknowledge it, that is the only way to bridge it and change it, really. You can't just oppose it. It's fuel on the fire if you do that. You have to understand why these damaged people are causing damage to others and themselves. And whether that's world leaders on the stage, you know, strong men of politics that have risen again in recent times, or whether it's something within your own life or culture, that it has to be addressed and challenged, but it also has to be understood. It's not just about locking the monster away and throwing away the key. Otherwise, it keeps recycling.
I'd like to follow up with the question to Kirsten, because it's a follow-up. You are the target. Your character Rose is the target of his frustration, is hatred and self-hatred. How did you work on a character that is on a receiving end and made it real? I think also, and Jane maybe can add to you. In the book, Rose was a smaller character. She was kind of a shadow. Here you have amplified her presence. Yeah.
Start first? Okay. So the first half was being on the receiving end of all of that. Well, it's interesting. Benedict and I didn't talk to each other on set at all. I mean, we almost felt guilty if we were like, hi. Like, it was just, we kept our distance. A lot of my scenes aren't even with him, so I kind of had to create my own demons and, you know, figure that out for myself, because there's not a scene where we fight, or it's a very few exchanges, and, you know, the piano scene, his artistry kind of like trumps mine, and it's all. I also feel like that Rose is a little bit representing all the pain that is inside of him in a way too. So I kind of saw it as, you know, a bigger picture of this, you know, relatable pain of isolation, of being gaslit by someone.
I'm just listening. Yeah. I think it's, well, as a woman, I was really interested in Rose's role and amplifying it as much as I could in the story within the context of her being a woman from the 1925, which is not the same as today. I didn't want to make her a heroine. I know. I think at that time it was very difficult for Rose to complain to her husband, George, about his brother who lived in the house, and Rose's natural politeness.
Yeah, it seems
deference.
rude. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
And also her sense of, I guess, you know, lack of confidence would make her think, oh, I'm a target because there's something wrong with me. And the sense of shame that would build to a point where there was really nowhere for her to go but to try and live this through, and the only thing that could help her at that point was alcohol, which she knew was not a good choice, you know. But interestingly, I mean, I do think Thomas Savage just draws this relationship so cleverly, because right from the beginning, when he goes into the Red Mill and insults her son and drives her to tears, it's those tears that make George come and comfort her and fall in love. So there's a great
from that moment.
payback for that.
I think there was a question here.
Yes, okay. Hi, I'm Helen Barlow, writing for The Australian newspaper. Jane said that you're one of the funniest people when she was researching you, Benedict. And here you hardly crack a smile, but you might be called the Cumber Bastard this time. I was just thinking, just to make something funny. But
I'll give you that, it's good.
but you've worked with, you played a bit of a bastard with Breathing Fire for Peter Jackson, and now another New Zealand director, you're playing another. You normally play relatively nice guys. So how was it to go to New Zealand and simulate Montana and also play the bad guy in a was he bad? I know you just explained his...
I mean, I have a problem with that kind of simplistic duality, not to, you know, sound too pompous about it, but I think he's just so complex. Once you start understanding someone, he can't become just the cookie-cutter antagonist bad guy. And that's kind of the beautiful poetry and complexity of the whole situation. And what Savage explores in the book, as well as what Jane has made in the film. And I loved going back to New Zealand. I couldn't get enough of it. It's an extraordinary country. It held us in a very precarious moment in our human history as a family at that point. My wife and children and my mum and my dad as well. So we were very, very fortunate to be together, very fortunate to be in that country with those people. And yeah, I'll happily go back to play a cookie-cutter villain as well if you want me to. I mean, any excuse to go down there. I think I'd need it. I don't think I'm allowed back now. It's a very special place to be. We felt very privileged to be welcomed and yeah, and make our home there for the duration of filming.
Speaking of New Zealand, maybe the producer and also can chime in, and Jane and the producer, on how was it to make the American West in New Zealand, because the work on landscape, as always with Jane's film, is sublime, and there is a real sense of place and the Western.
You know, Emil Sherman, who's my producing partner, and I, we were lucky enough to work with Jane on Top of the Lake, so we're very aware of that incredible landscape. But we just found it really extraordinary. I think one of the conversations that when you were on a trip, we had photos of Montana and photos of New Zealand, and we were asking various people from Montana about which location was New Zealand and which was Montana, and often they would pick New Zealand for some of those things. So it really works, and I think also it gives, I think, the film a sort of magical sort of sense to it, which also works so well with Jane's storytelling and the film itself.
There's parts of New Zealand that really are so empty, and I think to find 1925 Montana in Montana would actually be more difficult than where we were in New Zealand and the Hawkton Range and the Ida Valley, which is really empty, really a beautiful, forgotten landscape. And it really gave you that sensation when you were standing there and you looked around 360 degrees and you just couldn't see any civilization. It really felt like you were on a little boat in the ocean, except you were in a landscape. And actually what we chose for our location happened to have the highest wind value of anywhere in New Zealand, which is anyway a very windy place. So it was devastatingly difficult to both build and shoot there. But I guess it had that sort of extreme weather because it was so isolated, because it did have strange landforms, like the wind just came in over that, over those hills. And sometimes we had trouble standing up.
Hi, Stephen Shaver here for the Boston Herald. I wonder if Benedict and Kirsten could talk a little bit about what makes a Jane Campion film so uniquely Jane, and why it's perhaps like nobody else's work. Thanks.
I mean, there's definitely a sexuality in Jane's movies. Well, there is. There's a certain, listen, you make a scarf around someone's neck that they're connecting with, like something that's magical. I don't know. Don't make me feel bad about it. There is. That's a
good thing.
What?
Yeah, it's a good thing.
Yeah, there's a sensitivity and a rawness to her characters, and as you know, a female watching her female characters over the years, they all feel like real women to me, and the kind of acting and the kind of actors that, you know, the kind of performances that I aspire to as an actress.
Yeah, I completely second that. And, you know, when you meet Jane, you have all the baggage of her iconic status in cinema and the weight of that, and then who walks in the room is this delightful human being who's as collaborative and as frail and as interested and as humorous as the rest of us. And that still, there's just this underlying alchemy that she doesn't let on too much, because she's very modest. But it affects everyone, not just in the film. You see it with the crew. You see how hard they worked to make it the best possible shot every single moment of that shoot. And that adoration comes from pure respect, and also how she is, who she is as a human being, and her artistry. And she's just great fun to be around. Yeah.
I think the key thing with Jane and a Jane Campion film is that she really understands desire, and she encourages you to lean into it and to explore it and to embrace sensuality, sexuality, yearning, and the kind of emotions that are often hidden. And she finds a way of expressing them both in the script and in the visual language of the film. And so the cast, when they come in, are able to embrace that and feel emboldened rather than shy about expressing it.
Yeah, very true. It's freeing. It's freeing. It's a freeing experience. You know, you want to please. You want the experience to match the expectation, both for yourself as an artist, but also for the person who has put their trust in you. And when it's Jane, she gives you every facility to go there. Whether it's introducing you as a character to the cast and crew and saying, you know, you'll meet Benedict at the end of the shoot and just allowing you to be that person for an entire run of production. Or whether it's facilitating an exploration of character before production has begun by going to Montana, by getting involved in roping and riding and ranching and just having an immersive experience where you are free to express it as fully as you can within the paradigms of her good taste. It's a great experience, but she's also really good fun.
Somewhere here.
Bonjour, c'est Louis-Philippe Ouimet de Radio-Canada. Ma question est pour M. Frappier. Vous avez acheté le livre il y a 8 ans. Alors, 8 ans plus tard, aujourd'hui, qu'avez-vous à dire sur le travail de réalisation de Mme Campion et sur les interprétations de Mme Dunst et M. Cumberbatch?
Le grand bonheur d'être ici et de me rendre compte que ce que Jane a fait, ça dépasse toute la vision que j'avais au moment où j'ai lu le livre. Alors, je n'ai que du respect et que de la joie d'avoir travaillé avec Jane sur ce film.
Niels Jorgensen, Echo Magazine. There's a question for Jane. It's now been 12 years since Bright Star, so what made you decide to return to a feature film in this case? And was there, at any point, did you entertain the notion of turning this into a TV series?
Thank you. Look, I had a great time. I had a great time working with series, and I absolutely loved the collaborative quality of co-writing and co-directing and creating worlds, but it's also so much work. You know, like I think the thing I really love about series is creating the world and the tone, and then you do 6 hours of more and more, and in a way, you only need, I was beginning to think 2 hours is very beautiful. 2 hours is like perfect. It's and I noticed myself also on the Netflix, you know, online viewing platform, choosing to watch features more than ever. And I think the discipline and the rigor of those 2 hours was something I was excited to go back to after my sojourn. Yeah.
So hi, my name is Petra Erdmann from the Austrian Broadcasting Corporation. Hi. Jane Campion, I would like to know, you have been the first female director who won the Golden Palm. It's more than 30 years ago. I know you for your political and feminist statements. So what would you say, what else has to be done that female directors, as you come to the forefront of cinema in A festivals, in competition and so on? What's your experience?
Well, to me, I think the girls are doing very well. A woman just won the Academy, and last year at Venice, Chloe Zhao, and then this year at Cannes. So I think once you give them a chance there, there's not going to be much stopping them. I mean, I say that in a gallant way, but I still know that the statistics are not in the favour of women. There's still much less women. And I mean, I think the great loss for everyone is that there's just not enough feminine voice in narrative, describing our worlds, describing who we are, so that we've come to believe that all of us are a patriarchy, when actually, in fact, it's not the case. Women do think differently, and that's what's so beautiful. and really interesting. And we have seen it a lot more in television because women are really dominating that field and sharing really unique and edgy views. And I think all I can say is that since the Me Too movement happened, I feel a change in the weather that's absolutely substantial. It's like the Berlin Wall coming down or the end of apartheid for us women, that they are emboldened and they're supported by not just each other, but by the men as well. People can see how unequal and unfair it is.
There's one question there.
Thank you. Žiga Brdnik, newspaper Večer. I was wondering, the film is really breathtaking, the scenes of New Zealand and the scenes in the saloon. What do you think that people will watch it on Netflix, and what will you do to make it come to the cinemas?
But one of the I think great things about working with Netflix is that they do give cinema makers like me an opportunity to work with a budget I haven't had the chance to work with before, to fully express my vision. And I'm so actually grateful to that. They are working in a way for me like the Medicis or something, you know. Fortunately, they value artistry, you know, and that's a great, that's a great thing. And we have the chance to screen it both in cinemas where we can, and they make that possible by giving a 2 or 3 week corridor before the film goes online, and then even still the film will be available to be seen in cinemas. And I think people will choose to do that, like as a party event, go out. I envisage people with book clubs, and then they go and see the movie. And but I think one of the reasons that I was drawn to telling this story too is I felt it was like a sort of piece of event cinema, that it's got the scope and also a really tight, intimate story, I hoped, you know, that would make it something that people would make the effort to go and see in an actual cinema, because that's where I fell in love with cinema. And naturally, my big desire is to feed back into that initial inspiration.
I think we have time for one more. No, la signora, no, scusa. No, la signora là che sta aspettando da molto. No, lassù, lassù, lassù. Sta aspettando da molto.
Una domanda su Katia Ferri di Prezzioni di Borsa, il quotidiano Prezzioni di Borsa. Una domanda per Jane Campion, ma anche per i produttori. Lezioni di piano è stato un film con una grande alchimia, è incredibile tra, diciamo, le immagini e la musica. Questo certo non era un film sulla musica, ma magari ci potete spiegare qualcosa di più sulla colonna sonora.
We were lucky enough to work with Jonny Greenwood, the British composer and artist from Radiohead, on the score. And Jonny read the first draft of the script and fell in love with it, and immediately started responding with ideas to Jane about how he wanted to use the instrumentation in the score to match the characters. And I think Jane and I both felt that he actually created in the score a character of the music itself. So there's some really original work that he's done with the way in which, for example, the strings, he uses cellos and plays them as though they're a banjo, or with a piano where there's an atonal piano quality which mirrors Rose's descent through the alcohol, which I think were beautiful touches, and then a beautiful hornscape, which you see those French horns being emotionally echoing the landscape, and a haunting quality. And I think the relationship that Jane and Jonny managed to form through this COVID time was extraordinary, because they worked remotely but very intimately, and it was very powerful.
Yes, I mean, Jonny Greenwood, you have to describe Billy. He is a genius. That's just really the truth. And when you receive his emails, it's so extraordinarily invigorating, because he's so enthusiastic and so excited about instrumentation and what we could use and what would this be, and I barely know the instruments, so I'm going like, yeah, sounds amazing. Don't limit yourself. But he also is so willing to explore any extra things that you might want to do. Like if we were always searching for the right feeling for the sacred place when Phil is with himself, remembering with the scarf that he keeps in his groin, remembering Bronco Henry. And Johnny's music also does have that yearning thing that's always trying to find that top moment, stretching for it. And I really love that. And I really love how music in that way reminds us of, you know, how in life that's what we really want, is those moments that pull us, stretch us up emotionally and intellectually together, and also sensually. And, you know, it was exciting trying to find it, and, you know, between us all. And, you know, his humility is extraordinary as well. I mean, he's just like, hardly be bothered talking with us. He just can't wait to get back and try some more things. And, you know, he's incredibly shy, and I'm shy too, you know, when I talk about this stuff. So it was a bit funny, but now we can't wait to meet each other, and I think we're going to finally meet each other in London and have a Bellini that we can't have here.
I am really sorry, but this is all we have time for. Thank you, our guests, for being here with us, and thank you for the film.
Thank you.